Okay, so we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you watching us. We are back again on another Thursday with an amazing personality with us again. We have Dr. Marcus Ranney with us today, and he is an amazing human being from sick care to now being a champion of well being. He has transformed his life in multiple ways and have had an unconventional career, I must say. He's worked for several organizations. He was the general manager for Thrive Global, and right now he's running his organization called Humanedge Enterprises. And even prior to all of that, he's worked in various places, in various roles. So I'm sure he's going to tell us a lot about all of those things that he's been doing. And so, welcoming Dr. Marcus Ranney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karuna. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is indeed a pleasure to have you here. So, as we keep moving ahead, let me ask you a question that I ask most of our speakers. Tell us a little about, we want to hear it from the horse's mouth, a little about your life and your career journey.
I'm very fortunate because I think I'm one of those people who found out what I love doing at a very early age, and that is simply science. I'm a hardcore science geek, and I'm proud when I say that. So my entire career over the last 20 odd plus years has been built around that as a foundation stone. That's been my North Star, principally trying to unearth how we can achieve the most out of our human body. I truly believe evolution is limitless, and for each of us, we're on our own journey of evolution and change. And so my career has allowed me to zig and zag. I started out as a physiologist. I was in the Royal Air Force, and that's when I got a chance to work with fighter pilots, and I saw firsthand how when you push your body to extreme conditions, such as flying a fighter jet and that G-force that you're faced, what can happen to you. And that sort of started the journey. I went on to study space medicine. I worked at NASA on the human spaceflight program, working with astronauts. I led expeditions to Mount Everest, looking at the role of low oxygen, hypoxia, and how that can condition your body. I then led an expedition to the Arctic Circle, looking at the cold, the extreme cold, and how that can influence your mental health and your physical capability. So that was sort of the early stages of my career. I then graduated as a doctor. I trained in London. I was practicing, and I did a bunch of surgical and medical house jobs. And then after the financial crisis of 08-09, when the world really flipped on its head and Asia became the sort of the gleaming, the lighthouse, I thought, okay, how can I weave my story with the next phase of growth? And that's when I moved to India. I chased a girl, and it ended up very well. We got married. We got two beautiful young kids who you may see at some point, because lunchtime is going to be part of this conversation, so you may see or hear them at least. And then I did a whole bunch of jobs, which you spoke about, but really always healthcare and life sciences was the backbone there. And it went from sick care to well-being. And now through the work and this book that I've written, which we'll talk about at the Humanedge, and my current research is all very focused on human longevity. So performance and longevity. How can we truly maximize the 5 trillion cells? I want to live to be 120, and I want to help everyone get there as well. And so that's part of my experiments, the work that I do, and the work that I do with companies and my coaching as well.
Interesting. I must say, such an amazing journey where you've traveled so much, been to different parts of the world, and now you're back to Mumbai. It's like a full circle for you.
Yeah, it's been 2 big circles. So I was born in London, and the very same hospital, the very same building that I was born in, my mom tells me, is where I went back to medical school. So that was one big circle. And then, of course, the second circle was coming back to Bombay again, and now settling here with my 2 kids and my wife. And who knows how many circles there are. That's the great thing about life. It's a journey of circles, and I'm excited to unearth the many more that will come through the next years that I have left.
Yeah. Indeed. So I must say, Dr. Marcus, you've had a very unconventional career. Many a times when people pick up medicine, they choose to practice medicine like a normal doctor, but you chose to get into a lot of research. So, what drives you to do what you do right now?
My first day on the wards, my first job was as an intensive care doctor, and the consultant, I still remember his name, Dr. Nick Harvey at Chase Farm Hospital in London. He said to me, trust no one, question everything, and give oxygen. He said, if you follow these three rules, you will be successful in life, right? So that's really, this whole idea of questioning the status quo. I'm never comfortable just doing stuff the way things are meant to be done. I'm always trying to figure out, pardon the pun and the cliche, I'm sure it'll come up many times. I try and live at the human edge in many ways. And that's always is, okay, if what I'm doing right now, how can I disrupt this, right? When I was doing physiology, how can I disrupt it? How can I take the learning that I had from fighter pilots and astronauts and apply it to my thesis and and study something different apart from general physiology? When I was in medicine, how can I disrupt this? How can I bring the learnings that I had from Mount Everest or from the Arctic Circle or from NASA to my patient bedside? How can I disrupt this? When I was an investment banker, a venture capitalist, how can I disrupt this? How can we bring the digital technologies, the power of the mobile phone, and layer it into personalized medicine, doctor to consultations, genomics, all of those things. And now the work that I do with my corporate clients is, how can I disrupt this? How can I bring the performance coaching that I've been exposed to with athletes and astronauts and fighter pilots, and now apply it to the business setting? A CEO should have a performance coach. That's what I believe. A business should have a performance coach. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm always looking at ways I can disrupt the status quo, because I just love to be the misfit. And try and mix things up and bring the science, bring the physiology, bring the psychology, work on first principles in hopefully in an empathetic style with a communication set of capabilities that people enjoy. But that's how I live my life, and I don't see that changing for many, many years. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing to do, because you don't know that what would come out of that entire situation, and that lead to something so beautiful.
Exactly.
You also mentioned about first principle, and I'm not sure how many of us listening on this session know a lot about that. I've read about it. I know Elon Musk follows it, and I've heard about others also who follow it. So tell us a little more about what do you mean by first principles that you follow.
Back to basics. It's always like, our lives are so complicated, and I feel that people thrive in the complexity of life. Like they try, or they wear it as a badge of honor that, I'm so busy, or I've got all these things, and therefore if I got all these things, I'm suddenly successful. I think that's wrong. I think we need to distill it down. Like, what are the 3 or 4 big decisions that I need to make today? And then let me do those. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, if I've got a business in front of me and I strip it down to its core, who's my TG, what is my product, and how am I selling it to them, right? That's it. It's as simple as that. But we layer it on with all these fancy presentations and Excel sheets and go-to-market strategies and annual operating plans and all these stuff. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's great. That's what your investors want. And, I've sat on that side of the table, so I know how comforting it is. But as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, it's, who am I selling to? What am I selling? And how am I selling it? That's it. So, who do I need to speak to today? And there we go. So it's all the way down. And obviously, when I come to science, that's a different realm. So even the experiments that I'm doing. So today, I'm doing a water-only fast. It's 24 hours where the only thing I'm consuming is water and mint leaves. And I do this very regularly. And to mix it up today, because I wanted to accelerate my ketogenic state, I did a duathlon in the morning. So I cycled for 26 kilometers and I ran for 10 kilometers, pretty hard. So I got my heart rate up to 85%. So I wanted to consume all the glycogen stores that I have in my body so I can be in ketogenesis as quickly as I can, because I want to see what that impact is on my working day. I want to see how it's going to change my decision making. Is it going to promote more lighter state, more clearer decision, a better focus? So I'm constantly experimenting with my science and my glucose monitor that I wear on my arm and all of these different things. And going back to simple first principles of glucose plus oxygen equals energy, and where can we go from there?
Interesting, very interesting. So tell us a little more about what have been your key findings, and I'm sure you mentioned that in your book as well. So a little
Yeah.
about some basic findings.
Yeah, a big one that I've come to the realization of over the last few months that I've really been on this journey, this route, is that we just eat too much food. We're living in this calorie abundant life where everything we want and need is around us. It's heavily carbohydrate centric, which is not how the human body has evolved itself. And actually, if I just give you two very simple statistics. Number one, you have roughly 500 grams of stored carbohydrate in your body right now. That equates to 4 calories per gram. That's almost 2,000 calories of stored energy in the form of carbohydrate. So if I asked you right now, Karuna, and I did this on Sunday, to run a half marathon in a complete water only fasted state, you would be able to do so, right? So we used to think, and I used to do this, I run marathons all the time, and in the old days, I would pile my plate with carbohydrates the night before, thinking I need to store all this fuel. You don't need to do that. The body has that. That's just carbohydrate store. If we look at your fat store, so someone like me, I weigh 68, 69 kilograms, and I have roughly 12% body fat. So I have around 10 kilograms of fat in my body right now. Each gram of fat holds 9 grams of calories. That means in my body alone, I have 90,000 calories of energy only in my fat. I can run 30 full marathons right now, assuming I get enough water and micronutrients, and I will still be able to keep going. So when people tell me, oh, I'm starving, I'm hungry, I feel I can die. No, that's all that is. It's your body which has gotten so used to carbohydrate, sugar, glucose, and fructose as your main energy stores that your energy dips and you get that depression and your mood and frustration and anger. So I've come to the realization, actually, we don't need to eat that much. So typically my day is 2 meals. I skip breakfast a lot of times. That fallacy, or you need to have a big breakfast. That's not true at all. I quite often go straight to lunch. I then have a light dinner. Once every 2 or 3 weeks, my wife and I, we now do a 24-hour water-only fast. And we're working up to a 72 hours water-only fast over the next few months. And what I'm so blessed with now is the technology is available for us to understand the ancient principles. My wife, she comes from a Jain family, and Jainism talks about this only eating sunrise to sunset. Many cultures around the world, Buddhism, Islam has Ramadan, we're going to be starting soon. Christianity, so many of these cultures talk about restricting your food intake. And there's so much wisdom in that. And now we're living in a life where the technology is able to showcase, the science is able to prove how there is, there's a data-centric approach to that wisdom. So that's my biggest learning of date, is reduce your calories, consume a lot more healthy fats, good fats, proteins, fruit and vegetable, and a very little, only 10% needs to be carbohydrate. So in fact, the next book that I've already started writing now, Karuna, is on human longevity and the 5 things you need to do to live to 120. So lots of learnings, and I'm experimenting. I love experimenting on myself first before I advise it to my patients, clients, and people I'm coaching.
Wow, I think this is mind blowing, and it looks like we are all coming full circle, isn't it? Again, going from the ancient concept to moving to some other thoughts that we worked on for all these years, and now coming back again using technology to prove that those ancient concepts actually still work for us, which can help us be much more healthy and live long life, and even an abundant life for that matter.
Yeah.
So it's such an amazing concept that you brought up, and I think it helps a lot because when we are in a space when we are healthy, it is very easy for us to be much more productive in that place also. So So our health can help us actually be much better in our decision making, and also in our different areas of work that we are doing, our productivity. So what are
Yeah,
your thoughts
it,
on that?
it used to be the case where people would try and challenge me by saying it's well-being versus productivity. If I want my workforce to be productive, then I can't give them time off. I need them to be working, 999 as they have in China, all the hours under the sun, at their desk, metrics, etc., etc. And I think the grand realization that we've had in 2020, and it makes people like me so happy because I've been banging this drum for 2 decades, is that the competitive advantage of well-being. Well-being is central to our lives, and we've come to the realization on 3 levels. Well-being of us as individuals, right? Our immunity or resiliency or whatever it is that we have come to the realization of because of the pandemic around us. Then you've got well-being of the organization, of the unit, and how important our employees' engagement levels were, their mental health. You can hear my kids; they've come out for lunch. That's going to be a thread. And then you've got well-being of the system, right? It's a national security level issue. Do we have enough vaccines? Do we have enough protective equipment? Do we have enough stock of remdesivir? All of these things. And now, you may have seen the series that I've been doing with the Quint. I just launched the second video yesterday talking about the relationship between the climate crisis and our public health. And yesterday was around antimicrobial resistance and how we're running out of antibiotics. So all of these systemic issues, so well-being of the individual cell, of the unit, of the organization, and now of the system, of the planet, etc. All of that has come front and center. And so it's not well-being versus performance.
Yeah.
It's well-being upon which performance is then built.
Absolutely. I think that's something so key that all of us have realized over all these years about well-being. That if we are feeling well, as an organization, as a country, and there is focus on well-being, we are much more productive as an organization, as a country, or as a unit whatsoever. Having said that, when we talk about well-being, and performance, tell us a little more about, when you were doing research, you talked about different aspects that you came across. When you promote this in organizations, or talk about this in various forums, what are some responses that you hear from people, and how do you see, is it catching up in the in the world? Are people responsive to it, or are they open to the research that you're doing? How do you get responses from market?
Yeah, the mantra that I lived my life in 2020, which I think has been very readily adopted, is self-care and self-love is not selfish, right? And prior to 2020, there was still a degree of skepticism, cynicism, resistance to this agenda, but that's changed fundamentally. Just last year, I must have engaged with around 300 organizations in India, APAC, and around the world. And the big threads have been stress, resiliency, or actually I prefer to really look at it as anti-fragility, and maybe we can talk about why that is later on. Work-life balance, again, I talk about harmony rather than balance as a concept. Peak performance, fueling performance, and how we can achieve and allow our teams to be the best versions of themselves. And then energy, how we can create more energy in our team, in ourselves, me as a leader leading self and leading others as well. So these are probably the 4 or 5 big themes that I've been working with my partners on. I take a very data-centric approach. So I always start with an assessment phase, and my team and I, we've built these proprietary instruments now to diagnose what's the well-being index of you and your team right now. In some instances, particularly when I'm doing one-on-one coaching, I will include your biomarkers. So we look at your bloods as well. We look at your genomics as well. We look at your wearable data. So we're really building up a holistic framework of who you are in time and space. Because, if you're a leader and you're leading, a $1 billion company, and you've got 20,000 people who are reporting to you, the only way of making good decisions is, yes, you need to have all the information at hand, but how do you then assimilate that information to come up with the right decision? And how you slept, how you fueled the body, whether you've got the right amount of movement and exercise in the day, whether your brain is clear or distracted, all of these things are your biology. Your physiology and your psychology have to be working with you, for you, in order. And that's why I call my company the Human Edge, because if you don't have the human aligned, you cannot achieve the edge, your competitive edge, and all of those attributes that you look for. So we start with this diagnostic phase. We then go into the intervention, and then we get into the coaching and the sustainability phase, where I use a lot of content. So I build a lot of content, and I'm sure your viewers may have seen some of that on my social handles as well. So I'm constantly trying to figure out how can I create content which is engaging, but which brings it in a style which is accessible to people who are not from the scientific world. Because I love science and I hope to inspire people. In fact, this book was written for my two kids because I want to inspire the next generation of scientists and doctors and clinicians, but even general people. I want you to fall in love with the human body the same way that I look at the body, because it's an incredible designed, created force of nature. And if we can do that, if we can and be inspired by it, then we can lead and be the change that we want to be in this world around us as well.
Wow, I think you said it so well. And people who are listening to us, I think they are so well resonating with what you're talking right now. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Ruchi. You mentioned about that you feel that it's a brilliant thought. Rukia talked about that she loves the fact that you talked about being a misfit. And Ruchi has a question for you, Dr. Marcus.
Yeah.
She says, what does success mean to you?
I'll tell you what success doesn't mean first. A few years ago, I realized, and look, what I most enjoy about life is the fact that we can all fail, but we can all learn from those failings, right? And the best thing to then do is apply those learnings in how you then lead your life, the next route that you take in life, right? So I was prey to this as well. I fell into the delusion of the corporate definition of success, which is the accumulation of wealth and power, right? And the framework which I was operating at is, I have to have this in order to have these things like a fancy car and a good house and my kids going to a great school, etc. I need to do these things. I need to ace my exam. I need to get a great job. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And once I have this and I do this, I then become this. I then become happy. I become successful. And I flip that paradigm around, right? Because if you look at the people who are successful through the ages, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, etc. These are people who operate from a position of be. They operate from a position of who am I? And when I know who I am, I then drive what I do, and then that leads to what I have. And that have may not be materialistic, but it creates impact, it creates efficacy, it creates legacy in this world. So that's how I try and live my life. It's who am I? That's why I started by saying that I'm someone who's a science geek, and I'm passionate about science, and I want to create a world which is better for my children and my children's children, right? So that's the journey. And that allowed me to create this definition of becoming a champion of well-being, right? Because when I operate from that position, it doesn't tell you much, right? It doesn't tell you what is that role, right? But people often ask me, what's your designation? I say I'm a champion of well-being because that's my why. That's who I am. And then everything I do, the companies I found, the businesses I build, the books I write, the media I create, the companies I invest in, etc. It's all from that central operating system of who am I, right? So that's what success looks like. So I have a framework that I work around, but largely speaking, that's what success means to me. It's being that champion of well-being and leaving the world a better place for my kids and my children's children.
Amazing. And I think that is what has led you to become not just an author, a keynote speaker, a digital talk show host, but also a Guinness World Record holder. So tell us a little about that achievement as well. That what made you to strive for that?
Again, it's a misfit. So people would know me for running full marathons, and they'll see me cycling up and down Bombay or swimming in the old days. This is a Guinness record for running backwards.
Amazing.
What I'm most proud of is that my wife holds it too. And technically speaking, and people can Google this as well, my son holds it as well, because it was a record for the most number of people to race one another backwards. It was previously held by the city of Munich in Germany. And a few years ago, I was surfing the net. I was on my social media, and I got a message from someone saying, "Doc, would you like to get a Guinness record?" And I thought, of course I would. You know, I'm the ideal candidate for that. What's it in? He said, just turn up at 5 a.m. and you'll find out. So I convinced my wife to wake up. It's in Powai, which is the other side of the city to where I live in Mumbai here. And we arrived early 5:30 a.m. And it turns out that we were going to participate in the largest number of people to race one another, and that was the Guinness record. And so my son Aiden, he was around 16 months at the time. I didn't know where to leave him, so I had him in the pram. So on the first attempt, and we had 3 attempts, and we had to do 2 successful in order to get the record. And in our first attempt, and we were about 1,400 people, I actually ran backwards, pulling his pram with me. So he actually also has a Guinness record to his name as well. So that's something that I'm very proud, and I'll give him that certificate when he grows older. So that's what it is. It's one of those quirky, funky moments in life, and it's nice to just have that. Yes, Guinness record, tick. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And congratulations to you and your family members for doing something so interesting.
Thank you.
We've been talking a lot about achievements. We are also talking about so much of success. I want to flip a question to you, which is all about: have you ever thought of that you made some mistake? Any mistakes that you made, which brought in key learnings for you, and you kind of went back and kind of wanted to relook at it and make some changes in your life after that?
I fail every day. In fact, the one question I ask myself every day at the end is what did you learn today? And if I haven't failed, that means I didn't push myself enough. And I've learned that from my sort of endurance sports, right? The fact that growth happens when you're outside of the comfort zone, right? And that's why I always make sure my practice sessions, like today, are really tough, because when you push yourself during practice, then when you're in your game mode, suddenly everything becomes easier, and you can just focus on the game and not have to worry about all the other things around you. So that's something that people get wrong. They don't push themselves in practice, and they think, when I run the marathon, that's when I'll push myself to my 100%. But I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Push yourself to 120% during your practice, so that when you do run your marathon, you're coasting it. And you can then, if something inadvertent happens, like you end up pulling a muscle in your leg, or your shoelace tears, or you run out of water, or it starts raining, then you can just focus on solving those problems without having to think about solving the problem of running 50,000 steps one in front of the other, right? So I always try and fail every single day. I've started many companies. A lot of them have folded and gone bust. It's okay, because everything I've done, I've learned for my next one and the next one. I've tried writing many books, and eventually this one has become a success. And truthfully speaking, it was on the 33rd or 34th application to a publisher when finally someone said yes. That's how many times I failed. So now people, you made the introduction, best-selling author, digital talk show host. Yeah, everyone can see that on LinkedIn. But I want people to know the truth, right? In order for, an overnight success, as Vijay Shekhar Sharma says, and I love spending time with him, an overnight success is built on 20 years of hard work, right? So we don't see the 20 years of hard work that goes into building a company, but that's what it takes to be there. And so we've all got to embrace failure. We've got to ensure that we learn from that, because the worst thing about failing is failing for the sake of it. You got to learn from the failing and get up. So it's not falling 7 times; it's learning to get up the 8th time and learning what happened over those seven times along the way. So that's a very, very important lesson for all young kids. And I want to make sure that I'm teaching my kids this every day. Is not what did you learn today? No, what did you fail at today? And get into the idea of embracing failure and making it part and parcel of your routine.
Wow, this is like golden nuggets that you're talking about, Dr. Marcus. And I think for me personally as well, I take back this as a personal learning for myself that look at failures in a way that these are learnings for you, because that's where you're experimenting in life. That's where the fun lies. Because as you rightly mentioned, about the fact that overnight success is not happening. You're just looking at it from the view that it's overnight success, but actually there's so much of hard work and failures that are going behind all of that. So thank you so much for bringing up this concept and talking about this to our viewers, because this holds valuable insights, and this can help all of us shift our life.
No, absolutely. And the phrase I used earlier, which is something I believe in, which is evolution is limitless.
Yes.
Even when you look at the idea of evolution, what is evolution? Evolution is pressure applied to an organism and the survival of the fittest. And that survival has occurred because of errors which have crept into your genetic code, which has resulted in physical traits, which meant that you were better suited versus the rest, and you thrived and you survived and you passed on that to the next generation, and that's the genealogy of evolution. If the error didn't occur in the first place, if the mistake of coding didn't happen in the first place in your cell, we would never have achieved where we are today. So if you strip it back, that's why first principles, if you strip down everything, evolution is based on mistakes, and that mistakes allow us to achieve where we are today.
And I think nature allows us to make those kinds of mistakes as well. And that's why we're not like plants or animals or trees that you're living a static life, but we are actually living a dynamic life. And our destiny is based on what we learn from the experiences that we have in our lives every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would challenge that. I think all of the natural organisms are pretty dynamic. The difference is they operate on time scales which we are not used to in a human being, right? I love seeing sped up photography of a plant, and you see how it moves towards the sun, or how it responds to a stressful situation in its physical environment. They respond to pain. They communicate with one another. They actually send neurotransmitter chemicals between roots across acres of forest. It's pretty incredible, actually. So, sorry, that's just a side throw to my sort of biology love and science. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely love that. It's so beautifully expressed by you. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the nature holds a lot of answers for us, but it also allows us to make those mistakes and find our own path, that unique path that each one of us is made for. So thank you so much for bringing in that unique value that you're bringing in right now by sharing with us about science and biology, technology. So let's talk a little about the at the human edge, the book that you have. So what can our readers expect from that?
I'll put it here so everyone can see it.
Amazing.
6 chapters, each covering a different extreme environment, right? So ultimately, at the human edge is all about how does the body adapt and excel when faced with extreme environments. That's why it's about pushing the limits of human physiology and performance. So one chapter is I'll take you on what it's like to climb Mount Everest, and you'll see in your mind's eye as you go from base camp to camp 1, camp 2, advanced camp, all the way to the summit. I'll describe to you the geography of what's going on around you, and then take you on a cellular journey inside of your body to describe the low oxygen and how it's changing your cells, the acute mountain sickness that you suffer from, and how it can progress. Not only the disease side, but also on the performance side? How does it help you adapt when you come back to sea level? How do the learnings then apply to patients on intensive care? And what are the potential secrets for human longevity as well? So there's a chapter on Mount Everest. There's a chapter on sending you to Mars. There's a chapter on you running a full marathon. There's a chapter on diving to the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on the Earth's surface. There's a chapter on surviving the Sahara Desert, and there's a chapter on going to the South Pole. So those are the 6 chapters on the extreme environments. And then I've got one chapter on the secret to human life, which I've been fascinated with for almost 25 years, which is the mitochondria, which is the part of your cell that produces energy, makes you who you are, gives life to the human body. But very interestingly for us now, we are discovering from a science and a biology perspective that this tiny organelle, which used to be a bacteria that we engulfed many millions of years ago, will hold the secret to us living to 120, because all of the chronic diseases that we're facing, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, metabolic syndrome, stroke, etc., all have a role to play because of the dysfunction of mitochondria. So I wrote a whole chapter on the mitochondria as well. And the last chapter, which actually became an afterthought, which I included at the end, was I discovered for myself that, yes, I was learning about pushing the physical body, but the physical body can only reach a state when the brain and the manifestation of the mind kicks in. So the last chapter is called Mind Over Matter, and it's the secret to how you can get your body to that extreme limit. And that's when you unlock the power of the brain and the mind. So those are the 8 chapters, and each of them has been designed to take you and putting you in the footsteps of the protagonist and take you on a physical journey through the great vista of the outdoors, and then an internal journey into your cellular biology as well.
Wow, I'm just loving it of what I'm hearing. So I'm going to grab a copy of your book right away after this session. I'm going to order that. So
you must. It's available online and in most major bookstores as well. Yeah.
Amazing. I look forward to this. This is amazing knowledge. So where do you get so much of knowledge from?
I love learning. I consume, I read so many books. I get a book every day. A new book just arrived here. It's on my desk. So I read a lot. I watch a lot of YouTube, TED videos. I read scientific literature. And I have the great opportunity like this of meeting fantastic people like you and having conversations and learning wisdom from all the greats around the world. So that's, I just want to fill my brain with as many ideas and concepts as I can.
Wow, love that. Thank you so much for that. So tell me, I'm sure because you reach out and talk to a lot of people to learn from them or read books, etc., are there some specific people who've influenced you a lot? And has there been a mentor and a coach in your life?
I've been a big fan of mentors right from when I was a student. And I find that as our journey, as our route in life evolves, the mentors that we have with us have to keep changing. That's number one. Number two is I also came to the realization pretty early on that you can't just have one mentor because life is not unidimensional. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an athlete, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a coach. I have so many different facets of my life. I'm an academic. So I have mentors in these different spaces as well, people who I will spend time with, who will coach me on all of these things. Some of our formal relationships, like a formal mentor-mentee, some are just informal friendships or relationships that I have, companionships that I have that feed energy into me. So that's the second learning. And the third learning is I always believe that as you are being mentored by someone, you need to mentor someone else. So even when I was a student, I was still mentoring people. And I continue now. I have about 12 interns that I work with, 10 to 12 at any one time. And I'm constantly, people reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time. And my simple request to them is this: when you are approaching a potential mentor, have a very specific ask, right? Because you need to be respectful of that person's time. right? And I'm not saying that because I'm pretending to be a busy person. I think we're all busy people. We all have different priorities in life, and we want to help people genuinely. But the help is better when the person is very clear about what they're coming and asking of me, right? So a cold email will go on deaf ears. But if someone reaches out to me with a very specific thing saying, I saw you speak at this and I enjoyed it, or I got this learning from it, and I want to now apply this to my life, could you help me with X, Y, and Z? Then I know that I can carve out a 20, 30-minute conversation and we can specifically address that, as opposed to someone saying to me, Marcus, I'm interested in digital health and I want to have a conversation with you. I mean, that's so open-ended, right? I mean, I don't even know where to start. So I'm just being a little practical because I think it's important for all of us to think about these things. So mentor-mentee relationships, 3 things. And then when you're asking for a mentee, then, a mentor, be very specific about your ask and be realistic and be respectful of that person's time as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very realistic point that you brought up. So help me understand now that I know you more through our conversations right now. There are a lot of things that you've shared about yourself. Do you have any specific practices, from mindfulness space or physical health space that you practice on a regular basis, and you would like to share with our audience here today?
Yeah, I have a framework of 5. I sleep a minimum of 8 hours every day. Okay. And actually, we can go into the. I mean, I could talk for hours on the science of sleep. I won't bore your viewers, but I do a few little hacks around the room. So the room is at 18 degrees Celsius, which is the most restorative sleep. It's a very dark room. We have no screens in the room. There's no digital device in the room at all, ever through the day. And we all in the house, we all love power naps as well. So I will top it up with a power nap every day, at least for 20 minutes. So sleep is the first big thing. 8 hours, at least 8 hours cumulatively in the day. Sugar. I avoid sugar wherever I can. And by sugar, I mean the white crystal of death, right? It's in every processed food. It's there to make food addictive. We don't require it at all, as I spoke to you already about the stores we have. When you're consuming carbohydrates, consume complex carbs. So black rice, red rice, brown rice, white rice. That's the order of things. Sweet potato, new potato, simple potato. So very simple things. And there's so much on the internet now you can get out there. But complex carbs as opposed to simple carbs and no sugar at all. Treat yourself. So I love chocolate. I love a glass of wine or a glass of champagne or a drink, a gin and tonic, etc. occasionally. So treat yourself. I'm not saying live like a hermit, but be mindful about what you're consuming, because your body is a machine. And like any machine, the fuel you put in will lead to the output that you get, right? So that's sleep, that's sugar, stress, big killer in life. So be mindful, practice your breathing. I do a technique called box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and you repeat that 4 times. So I do this a couple of times a day, particularly before I'm going into a stressful situation or if I've just come out of a stressful situation. And then try and avoid the stress triggers that you have in your life. We all know who they are, what they are: relationships, people, activities at work, times of days, etc. Figure out how you can avoid your stress triggers. So that's the 3rd S. The 4th S is social. That's relationships. So spend an hour every day with people that you love, whether it's your kids, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your friends, whatever it is. Spend an hour doing that and give. When I say social, I mean give to the community. So volunteering is a big thing for me. Some of your viewers may know when the pandemic started, I took time out and I actually became a frontline volunteer working in the slums, back to clinical medicine. And I think we've all got something to give. It could be time, it could be money, it could be expertise, it could be just talking to another human being. We've all got something to give, however big, however small, but give. So that's my 4th. And my 5th is steps. Get at least 10,000 steps every single day. It doesn't have to be running. I'm a big walker. My post yesterday on Instagram was about how I consider myself a walker, and I walk everywhere. Any errands that I have to do, I either take the bicycle out or I walk. I don't take the car, and I make sure I get at least 10,000 steps every day. And if you do these simple things, again, it's back to basics. It's back to first principles. It's my 5S framework, and this is actually what I'm going to be writing about in my next book. And I think this will get you on longevity, it'll get you on performance, and it'll get you on well-being, and you'll just live life in a much happier state as well. So do these 5 simple things every day. Oh, you've typed it out. Fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, I have. So help me understand how it helped you personally, and any case or examples you can share from your coaching clients, etc., which shifted their paradigm completely with this.
I'll share my story, right? So I was volunteering for 4 months, and I got COVID, and I got it pretty bad. I actually had it really bad. I was put on steroids and all kinds of things. I had a bilateral pneumonia in my left lung. It was undiagnosed for 3 weeks. I then got a very strange complication called myositis, and I lost almost all the power in my right leg and most of the power in my left leg. So I couldn't even walk at all. And it took me 2 months to then get back to strength. I remember the first walk I did, my wife took me to Marine Drive on Bombay here, and I was able to do 3 kilometers walking in a lot of pain in an hour and 2 minutes. That's how long it took me to walk 3 kilometers. And that's when I realized to myself that I've been coaching about resiliency for so long, and now it was time for me to practice what I preach. So I went back to basics again, and the first thing I said to myself is, bad things happen to all of us, right? Suffering is part of the human condition. The flavor of the suffering might be different, but we each will have to face it in our own lives. So just get used to it, right? There's no point saying, why did this happen to me? Number 2, how I respond to that suffering is in my control. I can choose to be frustrated that I can't run anymore. I can choose to be depressed that I'm bedbound. I can choose to be angry at the world that my business has gone under, all of these things. Or I can tell myself that, no, this is life giving me an opportunity to do something different here. And that's when I told myself, how often in life does it give a runner the opportunity to start from the beginning? And I was going to make this a fun process. I was going to learn to walk again. I was going to learn to run again, jog, do all those stuff. And I got into barefoot running, something I had never done before. I got into walking 10,000 steps a day, something that I never did before. I got into intermittent fasting, something I never did before. And I am in such a better place now. I've lost 7 kilos. My energy levels are significantly higher. I've founded 2 businesses in the lockdown. I've launched a book. And I'm not saying this because I'm bragging or anything. I'm just saying it because, evolution is limitless. Again, we can each do all these different things. So I've seen that. And the last thing, just to complete the set, the last thing I learned was learn to say no, right? If there's something in my life which is draining me of energy, either a relationship, a friendship, a business, a client, I just say no. Like, life's too short. I saw that in my own suffering. I've seen that in the patients that I've looked after at the front lines. People have lost their lives, right? We've all come to the realization of just how precious life and nature is. And I'm here to live my life for myself, my family, my loved ones, and what it is that I want to create in my world, which is championing well-being. I don't need to prove anything to anyone else. I don't need to satisfy those other people. So if it's a drain in my energy, I say no. And I turn down things now all the time. And that allows me to do the focus, like doing stuff like this and things that I really want to do, because I've only got so many units of time in my day. Make it count.
Absolutely. I think this is mind blowing, because this is going to help all of us who are listening to this from your personal experience, how you shifted, moved, and evolved from the challenges that you've also come across. This is a real time example that you are listening to, guys, and I think this is beautiful for us to learn from and take back in our lives, and at least implement some things that we're learning from this session today. So I want to talk to you a little about giving some tips to our audience, specifically those people who might be still not sure of what they want to do in life. Oh, lovely. Hi. That's a little kid that we see here.
This is the
Hey.
younger one. There you go. Say hi. Say hi. Just being shy. Okay.
I have a young daughter. She's also 1.5 years, and of course, we keep seeing her around as well in multiple sessions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So you were asking about, sorry, you were asking about?
Asking about sharing some tips and thoughts around how we can use specifically mind over matter, or specifically what are some things that one could do when they are not sure of what they want to do in their lives. How can one become more clear, focused? Early on you found your calling, but there are times where people are not sure of what they want to go ahead with. So how
I
can
found
you
my
help?
calling. I found my calling. I found my North Star, but I always maintain that I don't know what I'll be doing in 3 years' time, right? And I can't remember who said it, but I think it may have been Steve Jobs in that validation speech that he gave at Stanford, where he said some of the most interesting people in life still don't know what they want to do at the age of 45 or 50. Maybe it was him, or maybe it was someone else, but that's how I feel. We should live life. I think, and I often think about this because of my two young kids now, and the work that I do with the World Economic Forum, looking at the future of work, and I do a lot of future studies. The days of us having one career where we work in one company for 40 years, where we think about that graduation day, and we've all done it, we've thrown that hat up in the air thinking that's the end of my study. We don't live in a life like that anymore, right? Even now, I am almost 40. I run two businesses, all of these things. I spend at least 1 hour every day studying, learning, because I need to be relevant. Because if I am not training myself to be relevant, then there's someone else behind me who's just waiting to do that. And the world is changing so fast. Technology, science, engineering, mathematics, all this stuff is going on around us, digital transformation, that we need to ensure that our business is relevant, that we are evolving at that limitless pace as the rest of the world is. So to any youngster, first of all, don't worry if you don't know what you want to do tomorrow, okay? But learn to learn, right? Don't learn about what you need to learn. Learn how to learn. Learn the resources that are available that will help you get knowledge. And now it could be podcasts, it could be YouTube videos. It doesn't need to be books anymore. Right? There are so many resources available. But get used to learning every single day. That's the first thing. And I tell all my team members this as well. Now, when it comes to innovation, creativity, focus, all of those things, I think the big challenge we have is we are living in a very distracted world. There is too much distraction around us, right? I have my mobile phone with me that has maybe 10 platforms of communication: WhatsApp, Skype, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, etc., right? The average human brain takes 20 to 25 minutes to come back into a state of flow once it's been distracted. Now, in the old days, it used to be just someone popping their head into my cubicle, then the phone line and the fax machine and the email. Now it's all of these platforms. So imagine someone is just prodding you in your back every few seconds. You're constantly going to be distracted. So I encourage all the people that I coach and I work with, let's take charge of technology. Let's not become the slave to it. Let's become the master. Don't be afraid to go into airplane mode for specific periods of time every day. Learn to disconnect from technology. Don't have that anxiety, oh, I've not touched my phone for 20 minutes. Who's messaged me? My client, my this, my that. It doesn't matter, right? Learn to be comfortable in your own skin. So every day, take 10 minutes, 20 minutes in your day where you've got nothing. You can see behind me here, I've got notepads. I've got 3 notepads, and I'm constantly scribbling down, drawing diagrams. I love looking at Leonardo da Vinci's. I actually have a copy of his notepad on my bedside cabinet, and I just love flicking through it because I just love this idea of taking time out, scribbling, connecting disparate thoughts in your head, going on these long walks, which I do every single day, and then using that as an ability to be inspired and connect the dots and be creative, and disconnecting from the distractions of the world. Because we've all got inner wisdom inside of us. We just have to allow ourselves to listen to it, because otherwise we're crowding it out with all the noise and the signals from the outside world. We can't channelize that inner wisdom. So give yourself the opportunity. Don't be anxious if you don't know what you're going to do, because it will come to you. And just be playful. Yeah, I learned a lot from these kids because they're just so playful. They're so curious. They've got so much to teach us. It's not parents that teach kids; it's kids that teach us parents.
It's teaching. So true. And I've experienced it personally myself after my daughter, because I keep seeing her how curious she is. And when she's asking questions and I'm going back to her and answering, it makes me realize that how beautiful it is to be as curious as a kid. And a lot of people, when they come to me during my coaching conversations, they also have these questions about, how do I find my calling, or what is it that I want to do, I'm not sure about. I think you brought it very rightly, that it's not about that. Even if you've not found it, it's okay. We just have to keep going with the flow, because there is evolution happening all the time. And every time that something you're doing, there is learning happening. And you never know when that dots will get connected in future. And that's going to just take care of everything. So,
One of the biggest problems we have with social networks today is that it's become an echo chamber, and the same viewpoints are being reinforced. And what I always encourage the folks who I'm interning with me or who I'm coaching is spend time with people who have the opposing viewpoint as you, because that's when you will be challenged and you will be forced to think about, why do I think in a particular way? Like, my opinion, what are the facts that make up my opinion? And opinions can be changed, facts cannot, right? So,
wow.
Think about that. Spend time with people who will challenge you, and read things which, that's why I love TED. You can just watch anything, and it could be such a weird subject, like a butterfly, an artist, or any kind of weird things. But it'll all go in, and one day you'll connect the dots on that. Yeah.
Yes. And I think I love this. And personally, for me, I'm going to take this back as well. You mentioned about being around people who would challenge your thought process, being around people, those who will ask you questions beyond your personal belief systems. That's where I think your mind just opens up for something more new that will come up.
Yeah.
Lovely. So, and of course, we have, for people who would love to learn, we have conversations with Karuna as a ready resource available with so many amazing personalities who keep coming into these shows. And of course, the book that we have, which is At the Human Edge, which Dr. Marcus has brought up. It's an amazing book, and I'm sure it's going to be really, really a great one. So, Dr. Marcus, before we end, I would love to hear your comments on our show, the talk show that we are, we focus on creating conscious cultures, leaders, and careers. And our focus is that, we can live a holistic life. And it's not just about one aspect of your life, but building a great life in a holistic way. So, what's your thought about that? Your feedback about our session?
I think it's very important. We are. I think it summarizes beautifully the conversation we've had. We've got the inner wisdom inside of us. We need to ensure that we are creating space to be mindful, so we can tap into that. Because whether you're a leader, and we're all leaders, right? We're either leading a home, we're leading our kids, we're leading a team, we're leading an organization, we're leading ourselves. We're all leaders. And the best way of being a leader is to self-care. And that's where that competitive advantage of well-being comes in.
Thank you for being on our show. I think there were so many beautiful nuggets that you shared. And I wish you good luck with At the Human Edge. And not just with that, but also many more amazing things that you're going to come up in future. So thank you, and wish you good luck for that. And thank you, people or the audiences who are listening to us in live or would be watching it later. Thank you for all your pointers. Do drop in your questions, and we would be glad to answer them as well. Do order At the Human Edge. It's an amazing book. I'm going to be doing that right away after this session as well. So thank you, Dr.
If I could just give everyone my handle, it's just at .docm Ranney, my surname, Ranney. I'm very happy to connect with folks. Thank you, Karuna, for having me on your show. Congratulations on building such an incredible platform, and wishing you many, many more successes to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll be back again with yet another amazing personality next Thursday. So keep watching our session. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone.